Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share real life experiences and the tools they've developed to move forward and live their best lives. I'm Jennie Taylor.
And I'm Michelle Scharf. Today's going to be fun.
Because we are the two real people sharing real life experiences and how we're just trying to live our best lives.
Yeah, exactly. This is going to be a fun segment. We've talked about this on several of the different episodes. We should do an episode on developing a relationship with our dead husbands.
Which only if you have a dead husband can you say it like that. Because, so if you're listening and you don't have a deceased spouse, please know that there is kind of this widow humor. Even my 16-year-old daughter, she has it. She'll say something about her dead dad, and people who are listening give you these big eyes. But sometimes humor is really just a coping mechanism. So please don't take any disrespect as we talk about that. And in fact, I think this conversation will prove that there is absolutely no disrespect toward the deceased, but actually a great reverence, and I think both of us still feel a great connection.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to talk about today.
I've got new stories to share with you.
All right. Michelle is going to kick us off with some stories, and we'll just kind of see where this goes. But to our listeners, we're talking about the idea of developing, not just maintaining, but even developing and improving a relationship with a loved one that you have lost. For me and Michelle, it's a spouse. If we get into it, I could talk about how losing my spouse has actually helped my relationship and my thought process about having lost my father as a 10-year-old little girl. So I think this is going to be really interesting. Our beliefs will play into this, our perceptions of life. They're all just our own. We're not pretending to be psychics or psychologists or anything. These are, again, what we try to make this show about: real people with real life experiences, and how these experiences with those we have lost have helped us keep going after we've lost them. So, Michelle, start us out.
Yeah. So when John was on his last couple months, he's like, I just don't want to leave you. I don't want to leave you. And I'm like, oh, babe, it's going to be okay because, we're so close. Definitely we're going to be able to still connect with each other, even if you're gone, even if you're not here. And I'm sure some of that is, like you said, our belief system, right?
Sure.
I was raised missionary Baptist, very different come from the LDS faith. And then I converted to the LDS faith. I was very active and engaged for 26 years. And then a couple years before John was diagnosed and got sick, I was a little bit more inactive, and then just decided that organized religion in and of itself is just not my bag. And part of that is my own struggles with perfectionism and how that can be toxic in the LDS environment. But
that's a conversation for another day.
Right. That's an entire another thing, right? So I don't have any bad thoughts or feelings towards. Sure. I joined the LDS church, and I also left it. It's like I didn't have anyone forcing me in either direction. I didn't feel like brought into it, or it was a choice I made both directions. And so I have no ill will or bad feelings towards it at all. And it was a good thing for me. It was a grounding thing for me. But when my husband died, I had some experiences where I used to do massage, and I used to do a lot of energy type work. And my work as a midwife, very intuitive, and also felt very much connected to other spirits or beings from the other side. And I used to not talk about this publicly because I thought I was unique, and I'm finding I'm less unique.
Yeah.
That other people have these experiences as well. And so I thought that I was kind of unique, and I didn't really talk about them a lot, but I would feel these intuitive connections with beings or spirits or whatever you want to call them. And they've really helped me in my life, in my life direction, and in a lot of things. So when John was saying this to me, I thought, well, of course, we're going to continue to have this relationship. And I thought it would be easy. I thought it would be easy to have that connection, as if the moment he crossed over, we would still be able to talk as if he was just right here, which I do talk to him in that way. In fact, last night I had a long conversation with him. But when he first passed over, I did not feel him talking back. I thought that I would be able to really hear him.
Yeah.
really...
Well, you had a couple of years knowing his death was coming to kind of prepare and anticipate that.
Yes. And because I had that, I had convinced myself that I would not have...
false understanding.
I had a false understanding about what death was. And I was just shocked by it. Anyway, time goes on. A lot of things happen in that first year. I end up moving into a new home. And because I did everything wrong, I built a brand new home for myself as soon as my husband died, which, they say...
Michelle has broken all of the grief rules.
I don't follow any rules. That is the way I live my life. But
have you met Michelle? Yeah. I mean, nobody's surprised.
Yeah, that's the way I live my life. I don't follow the rules. I make my own as I go. Anyway, I'm in my closet, and I was having this moment where I realized, and I had not spoken out loud to him for quite some time because I kind of given up on it, really. And I'm in my closet and I'm having this conversation. I pour out my heart of several concerns that I have about our family and our children and relationships and all kinds of things. And my sister-in-law, 4 months later, goes to a psychic out in California. She goes for a completely different reason. Has nothing to do with my husband at all. And she calls me up and she goes, "You need to sit down. You need a pen and paper. I need to share with you something." She starts sharing with me these items. And literally he answered everything I brought up in that conversation in order from beginning to end. I had 4 basic concerns, and I won't go into that. It's irrelevant. But he answered every single one. She finishes talking, and I go, "Okay, all right. All right, this was John. He heard me. He heard exactly all my concerns." That was amazing to me. And so I told my children about it. Some of them believe, some of them don't. Some of them think I'm nuts.
Some of them think you're crazy.
Yeah, which I'm used to that. I mean, that's just...
Again, no surprises.
No surprises. And so I'm like, wow, that's so cool. So then I start talking to him. And I've had several instances since then. One of them, I was laying in bed, pouring my eyes out. It was one of those dark grief moments, which I know you've had. Mm-hmm. We've talked about them.
Yeah.
Laying in bed, crying my heart out, just wanting him there so badly. And I turned to his side of the bed and I opened my eyes and I could see him laying there next to me.
Wow.
And I knew if I reached out and touched him, he would just vanish into nothing. But I sat there and I got to really talk to him. He never talked to me like physically like him, but I could see his facial expressions change as the things that I would talk about. And I could know, I had a sense of like what he would be telling me about those things. And it was profound and it was such a healing moment for me. And so I've really gotten to the point where I realized he's not gone. He's still here. He's still taking care of me. His concerns are still the concerns he had before he left. They're still his concerns today. Here's my most recent one. You ready for this?
Are we ready for this? Michelle, we're never ready for what you say next, but let's say it.
So I'm in Belize. I'm getting my 3rd massage because I go on vacation. I try to, really spoil myself when I go. I'm getting my 3rd massage while I'm there, and I went with 15 of my closest friends. They're very close to me now because the first massage I had was out on a pier, and it was quite windy that day. And the sheet kind of went sailing for a minute. The next 2, I chose not to opt for
outside.
The pier. Yeah. No, actually, they're all outside. Oh. So we're still outside, but we're in a little more enclosed area. And I could hear my friends around. They were still taking pictures and being silly. But a few minutes goes by, and I'm starting to fall into a deep sleep. And suddenly I feel a large man's hand on my back, really pressing down hard on me. And I'm thinking, okay, who is this? So I reach out my arm to like grab where I think he would be standing. And I'm doing this pulling in motion. And the massage therapist says, "Lady, you all right?" Like, she's like, what is she doing?
Because there was no one there.
There was no one there, evidently. And I said, yeah, I was trying to to shoo away my friend. They're just being silly. Just don't worry about them. And she takes her hands off me and she steps away from the table and she goes, there is nobody here. And so I go, oh, I lift my head up. There's no one there. So we start again and it happens again. And I'm thinking, okay, now she's in on it. And so I lift my hand in front of my head to try to knock this person out of their way. And she goes, lady, no one's there. And I look up again and no one's there. So anyways, I'm telling one of the ladies that I went on this trip with this experience. They're like, that was John. It was John. And, I didn't have the innate sense at that time that it was John. But as she was telling me that, I'm thinking, well, it kind of had to be. I mean, there was nobody there. And it was such a distinct, warm, I could feel the heat. I thought for sure somebody was there.
Person, huh?
It's a real person. And it was just like this comforting, just pressure on my left or right shoulder. So anyways, that was pretty cool experience. And then the other experience I had is we were rafting down the jungle in the middle of the Jaguar Preserve on this river. And it was beautiful. And I was out by myself and kind of in front of everyone. And a dragonfly, this looked like to me would be like an old dragonfly. I've never seen one like this. It was all black lacy wings and black body. It was beautiful. And I see dragonflies a lot. Like that is one of the ways that John has shown up to me several times. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. It just such a cool experience, So it's those little things. It's those little, I think sometimes we miss them, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think of this relationship I have with my husband, my belief system, my own faith. I would say I know for a fact Brent still exists in a different state, in a different sphere. I joke that I lived half of my marriage with him living across the world, and now I'm living a good chunk of the rest of my life with him across the veil, which to me is kind of that separation between life and death. I will say that what shocked me the most when he died was realizing how close for me that other side is. I've grown up with the same faith my entire life and believing that people exist after death and that there's life after death and that there's a spirit world somewhere. And I've always known it was somewhere. But, since losing Brent, particularly in those first few days where everything's so raw and so fresh, I almost felt like, it's right here.
It is
here.
It's
here.
Yeah, it's
and
here.
Then I start to watch movies like Loki, or you watch things about time travel, or you watch things about different dimensions. Even the dumb little Spideyverse, if you saw that version of Spider-Man. I'm like, that is
here.
It.
Yeah,
all of these
here.
Science fiction-y kinds of things. And I tell my kids that, and they think I am crazy. I tell them, all of these cool science fiction things are so close to what we believe is God's reality. In our home, I call it God's reality, that time and space and distant location doesn't work eternally the way we think it does in mortality. And so for me, it's, and I've had some experiences where I felt Brent near or felt like I know what he would say in a given situation or what he might do. I feel like I can talk to God either with words or in my mind. I feel like I'm learning to talk to Brent either with words or in my mind. But a couple of really cool things that I would like to share about these it's almost been 3 years now since we lost him. Just the fact that I feel our marriage is stronger and our relationship is closer. And that to me has been a beautiful thing because, the big tragedy, of course, is losing that marriage and feeling as if that other half of you is gone. And it's not like the left half or the right half, but it's half of every cell in my being is not here. And so to find that I really have this reassurance he does still exist and he is still mindful of us. Like you said, he still worries about the same things I worry about and he still cares for our children and things. But for me, what's been really incredible is to have some of the experiences I have had in the last couple of years that let me see life through his lens. Because, anybody who's known me longer than just since I've been Jennie Taylor, the widow, Brent and I had a really high energy, high dynamic marriage and family life. Like, we don't sit still well, neither one of us. We've always both been very motivated. We're doers. We're ambitious. We're running 1,000,000 miles an hour always. And so we got married 4 months later. After we got married, he left to boot camp. He was gone for a year. He came home for a while. He was gone for a year. He deployed. He ran for office. He was getting a master's and then a PhD. I had my bachelor's and my master's. I taught school for a while. Then I gave birth 7 times. I mean, there was always a lot going on. And there were times where I'll admit, the frustrations of day-to-day living with someone else, or the frustrations of feeling like, what am I doing with all these kids? And I don't know how to raise a baby, and I can't keep the house clean. And some of the things that were maybe my role, and it was very consciously chosen. And I know some people would disagree with it, and that's fine. Brent and I very openly chose and discussed often about our traditional roles, that he would be the breadwinner, the provider for our family, and that I would be the primary caregiver of our children and our home. And it wasn't anything sexist or anything oppressive. It's what we chose, and it's what worked for us. But I'll admit that there is a lot of frustration in the stay-at-home mom life, particularly for someone that's driven and ambitious, and I don't sit still well. And it's been really neat as I've now had these crazy experiences to be involved with the Army, or crazy experiences to be involved in some political circles, or given opportunities to interact with the media, or do
all
some
your
public
speaking engagement.
All the things Brent used to do. And I now see the world through his vantage point in a way I don't think I could have while he was still alive. And it's really made me love and appreciate him even more. Because it's easy when you're in your role. Now, whether you're working for a living or working for service or whatever you're doing day to day, it's easy to know how hard you work and how hard it is. And it's easy to look at the other person or the other people and say, oh, they just don't get it. They'll never understand, or they don't appreciate. And I found myself in the 15 years Brent and I were able to live on the same side of the veil. I would sometimes feel that way, like, oh, he just doesn't know, or he doesn't understand, or I don't feel appreciated. I think women in general, we feel that way sometimes. And now I feel like I've been able to see the world in which he lived, and the sense of purpose that drove him, and the important work he was doing for our community, or for our military, or for my hometown. And I've realized that didn't take away from his care and concern for our family, or for me and our marriage, or for our children. It was all part of it.
Yeah.
And so I've had kind of this aha moment of realizing how holistic Brent was in his approach to life, that he really was motivated by trying to just make the world a better place at home, at work, in Afghanistan, at the North Ogden City Hall building, wherever he was. And so those to me have been kind of some quiet, almost reprimanding moments in my life, where I found myself thinking, oh, I never saw it like that, or I never appreciated that. And because of that, I do feel closer to him. I remember one of my biggest fears when Brent first died was that we'd be separated for so long. We were only married 15 years. That's like 5 minutes. I mean, it's so fast. And I'm probably going to live like 50 or 60 more years, and I'm going to be 100 when I finally die. And I know I'm going to learn, and I'm going to grow, and I'm going to change. And when I'm 98 or however old I am, I'm not going to be the same 39-year-old I was when he died, or the 38-year-old I was when he deployed for that last time. And that made me very sad, because I was thinking, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to change. Will we even know each other? Will we even recognize each other? Because I'm convinced we'll see each other again. That's not been my fear at all. I'm 100% positive he's going to be waiting for me to give me a ride from wherever that veil is. I found myself really worried that we wouldn't know each other anymore because of the time that separates us. And now I feel such a peaceful reassurance that we're both still learning and growing. And we can grow closer to each other. For me, as I grow closer to my faith and my God, I know Brent, where he is continuing to learn and to progress. Obviously, we're bound together by these beautiful 7 children that we both just hope and pray will have happy, fulfilling, successful lives. And I find myself at great peace that even though I am learning and growing and changing, I feel like I'm becoming more of an us. And that's kind of weird to people on the outside. I'm not saying I am Brent. I'm not saying I've inherited him or anything like that. But I'm no longer just who I was when he died. I'm not who I was when I met him, for sure. He's now such a part of me. Mm-hmm. And so as I grow and as I change and as I hopefully learn and progress for the next billion years of mortality, I realize we'll still know each other. We'll still be very connected because we're connected in that growth. And that's something that, if particularly for a new widow or someone that's newly facing this grief, just the reassurance that you can still grow together. You have to work for it. Like you said, it's not like they just hang out all the time. There's times I'll feel Brent near, or I'll be frustrated and wonder, why aren't you here to help me with this or something? And maybe a funny thought will come in my mind, like just something to kind of relax some of the pressure and the tension. Or I can't tell you how many times I've turned on the radio and a song comes on in the car, and I'm like, those words could be straight out of Brent's mouth, but they're set to a Pink song or something, So to me, it's been a beautiful journey, as heartaching as it is. And there's still those really, really dark, sad moments where I just say, forget this great eternal connection. I want you here now. But it's been a great journey to realize that my husband is such a part of me that, of course, he's a part of me moving forward. Mm-hmm. I hope my children, as they grow, will feel that too, that they can feel a connection to him, not held back by his death and the grief, but that they'll be able to say, hey, there's a part of him alive in me. There's a part of his quirks or his memory or his experiences that I take forward. So I'm not afraid of moving forward. I'm not moving on and leaving him in the past. Like, guess what? He's going with me every step of the way.
Absolutely.
And that's been very peaceful for me.
Absolutely. Well, we need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up this little segment. We're going to talk about not only expanding our relationships with our partners, but what moving forward really looks like for us. And we'll be right back. And we're back. We've been talking about expanding that relationship with our former spouses, even though they've passed on into another existence. I think it's really interesting. I think probably a lot of my spiritual beliefs really are kind of based in the LDS kind of thought pattern of that we're spirit beings.
That we're eternal beings. That the end of our body is not the end of our existence.
But I think it's interesting when you were talking about like the sci-fi or whatever kind of depictions of how it's all right here. I think that really is true. I've had several experiences since he's passed. I'm like, are we just living in a simulation?
Like a parallel universe.
Yes. And I'm thinking, how many other parallel universes am I just not consciously aware of right now? And that's fascinating to me, although I don't try to stay there very often because
the human mind can't handle it.
The rabbit holes are deep and wide, and that's not a good place for me to go. But I do love spirituality and kind of that intrinsic connection to what is here, but what we often don't see. And so it's fascinating for me, and it's been kind of fun for me kind of to play with it. You know, the other day before I left on my vacation, I was outside and I said, I haven't seen any dragonflies this year. And just as I said that, a dragonfly flew inside my patio. Like I was turning on my water faucet to feed my plants, and it came and flew in front towards the back of my house, which is just an awkward place for a dragonfly to come.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, that's so crazy that I would say it and manifest it right in that moment. You know, it's so powerful. Which brings me to think about some other things you brought up. You said that this relationship is still growing and that you're still evolving as well, and that you've worried about like what that would be on the other side. My husband was concerned of me left to my own accord. John had a way. When we got married, my dad was like, oh, she's your problem now.
There you go. You take her.
Oh, she's your problem now. Thank goodness.
Pass her on.
My hands. She's a handful. But John had a way of loving me enough to let me explore things and discover my own boundaries, and lassoing me in a way that I'm like, okay, I won't take it that far. Yeah. And I think that he was really worried about how far I might take things once he was gone. And in all fairness to him, I can see now his concern, because he
might be right.
He wasn't wrong. We'll just say he wasn't wrong. It took me a while. I discovered some dark places about grief, and I don't actually regret any of the things that I did.
It's all part of the journey.
It's part of the journey. I learned a great deal from it. I learned darkness about myself. I learned about, being responsible and use of substances, use of people, or even dating to avoid. And so I've discovered a lot of things, and it is interesting. I think, gosh, I don't know that he could stand me if he was back here, like the person that I've evolved to, or the things that I've experienced. But
would he even like me?
But I know that is actually also not true. He loved me so much, and I can feel that love still to this day. I do wonder about, because I do feel like in some way our marriage is growing as well. And I have not found that I've dated a wide variety of people. I've been very open to dating people that I wouldn't necessarily think is my type, or, I've just gone out to just experience meeting new people. And as I've done that, I've thought, if I find that right person, how do I manage to have that connection and relationship and have it grow, or does that stop? And I think that sometimes that is what is keeping me from really choosing into a relationship.
Interesting.
Because I don't want to have to give it up. And people tell me all the time, you have to let them go. You have to let them go. And I'm like, do I though? Do I really? And I think honestly, here's a couple things I've learned. One, I don't actually need a man. But I want one. Yeah. And then you talked about traditional values, and this goes right into that. As wild, as fun, as crazy, as independent, and as forward thinking as I am, I have very traditional ideas about marriage and about what that, like monogamy and exclusivity,
and that loyalty
and
to
that
each
loyalty. Other. And I also, I don't need a man to provide for me, but I want to find one who wants to. And there's some nuances to that, Yeah. I have found that I think that some of the men that I've dated are like, one man said to me, well, you don't need me to provide for you, so you don't need me.
Interesting.
And I'm thinking, do you really want a woman who just needs...
Is it just the paycheck?
Yeah. And I'm like, no, I don't need a paycheck. I'm okay. And I've been smart. But I want someone to love me in the way that he would still traditionally want to provide for that person.
Here's what's interesting here, because everyone listening knows how I feel about remarriage, or at least anyone who's ever met me. As much as I can say I don't like the idea of remarriage for myself at this point in my life, I can also, with full
I wish
disclosure,
you could all see this.
This is like so painful for me to say.
Her eyes are rolling in her head.
I do believe that marriage is better than not marriage. I do believe that a partnership is better than being alone. I can be fiercely independent and handle everything I need to handle without some, male person carrying me through the dragon's fire. And yet I know there is something beautiful about that partnership. And whether you have traditional values or forward-thinking values or whatever you want to call them, I believe men and women are better when they're together. I believe we as human beings complete each other. Yeah. And so that's where I have kind of the nuance of saying, I hate remarriage, but I think marriage is a beautiful thing.
I do, too.
I think companionship is a beautiful thing. I think
Do you find yourself watching other couples And noticing the things that you took for granted.
I think that's a natural part of it, and realizing maybe those things didn't matter so much. But I will tell you, Michelle, I'm going to back up because I remember being a newlywed bride, and I think that's when I started to notice some of those things because I spent half my marriage not living with my husband.
Yeah.
And when he left to boot camp and we were newlywed and I was just devastated and couldn't breathe without him. And then I'd go to work and some other young wife would complain about her husband's socks being on the floor and not in the hamper. I'm like, if only my husband were here to put his socks on the floor, and so I think I gained that appreciation. I think it's also through the deployments and separation time of our physical life together that I learned I can handle life without a man by my side, or I'm not helpless and hapless and hopeless. But that it's so much better when he's home. I can handle what I need to, or I can call for help or get the resources I need. I can. I'm not the damsel in distress with no backbone anywhere. And yet, even with that fierce independence and redheaded nature that came with me the day I was born, my life was better with a companion by my side. I will never not say that. And so that's where I struggle in my head to know that I even believe people who have lost a spouse can remarry and still continue on. I don't think it's, put John on the shelf and he's never there anymore. I think that would obviously grow and change. But let's say down the road, if I ever do end up crazy enough to follow you into the dating world or, some other way I end up remarried, whoever's going to love me is going to have to love the fact that I am largely who I am because of Brent Taylor.
Yeah.
And these 7 children that will forever be mine and Brent's children and these experiences I have had since losing Brent Taylor are what make Jennie Taylor.
Yeah.
You can't separate that. So I feel like I'm evolving in my thinking about that. I still don't like it, but that doesn't mean I don't see it from another perspective. And I do think there's beauty in a marriage relationship. I think that companionship is to be desired. Whether you're young or old, widowed, divorced, never married in the first place, I do look at that and say a good, strong relationship can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't go get married just to say I'm married because, man, I know I joke. I'm more happily married than most people I know. So, and I say that with a grain of salt, but you and I both know people who are very unhappily married because they think any marriage is better than no marriage. I'm not saying that. I do believe in the institution of marriage.
Yeah.
And I do believe there is such a beautiful value when men and women come together in a partnership. And I think part of the reason I don't feel a desire to date or move on to that next step of my life, I still feel very much in a partnership with Brent. I don't feel like I lost that partnership. I lost the physical companionship, and that is a difficult thing to lose. But I'm learning that again, Brent is a part of who I am. And down the road, if someone else comes along, I'm sure it will be Brent convincing me to go ahead and let my mind be open to that because he would want me to have that beautiful companionship.
Yeah, I think so.
I know that. I still don't like it, but I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, so on this trip, there's a bunch of single people that went, but also a bunch of couples. One night we got off the van, we were heading into a restaurant for dinner, and one of the husbands had gotten off early and waited by the van door, and we were all piling out of there, and his wife finally gets out of the van, and she just walks past with all of us walking past, and I said, "Hey, did you see he waited for you? He waited next to," and she looked at me and she turned around and looked at him and she walked back over and put her arm around him, and he put his arm around her, and they gave each other a cute little kiss, and they walked into the restaurant together. And I thought, it's those little things that sometimes we in a relationship miss or we don't see or we kind of take for granted. And it's okay. Like, it's okay to do that. But it's interesting for me that I'm starting to see those things, and I really miss them. Another couple, I really got to know this guy a lot better on this trip. I'm just leaving everyone nameless, but he was just singing the praises of his wife, like just, oh, she's awesome, she's amazing, she's this, she's that. And I just was so tickled by it. I'm like, he's your biggest cheerleader. And when I went home to my bungalow that night, I was like, oh, I miss having my cheerleader. Yeah. I miss having that person in my court, another guy who's just like so fiercely loyal and just, just loves his wife just madly. You can see it. And I just thought, oh, I just miss it. Mm-hmm. I miss it.
No, it is something to miss. I love seeing, I know a lot of people who are widowed get hurt or irritated by couples who are loving and affectionate with each other.
I love it.
I love it.
I do
I
too.
love to see that. I love to see, I'm grateful that you're appreciating each other while you have each other. I love watching as couples care for each other and really do become each other's cheerleaders. And I will say, and this is maybe a little segue, maybe we can talk about this another day or just quickly today. One thing in my mind is I've become a widow, which of course of the female side of the widowhood, and everyone has connected me to every other widow they have ever met, which is wonderful, and I appreciate that sisterhood. But as a widowed mother woman, I still enjoy having interactions with men and women in a very platonic, non-intimate type of way. And I think that's one thing that was really challenging for me at the very beginning was I didn't just lose my companion and that different perspective that he brings to our conversations and that male viewpoint and things. But it's like for a while I was cut off from any male viewpoint at all because and again, because I'm not looking to date, and so I'm not saying I'm looking for that necessarily at this time, but I love when I can get together with some of my friends who are couples, and it's not just me getting together with the wives. I like the conversation that comes from both genders. I like the more complete nature of that.
I think so too. I miss it incredibly.
I think we get widows in general. We kind of get clumped together, which is wonderful. These beautiful, strong, widowed women, and so many of them in my life, including you, have made such a difference in my life. And I'm grateful for that sisterhood friendship. But again, it goes back to my philosophy on men and women completing each other and complementing each other. Not just, hey, I think you're great, but we complement in how we see the world. So many times through the pandemic and war and everything these past couple of years, I've craved just a conversation with Brent, get his viewpoint on some of the policies and politics and things. So what was really hard was when I lost Brent, it felt like for a time I also lost all of our couple friends, or at least the male half of those couple friends. Yeah. I think now we've kind of put that together more to where they're maybe comfortable with me. I'll be the third wheel. I don't mind. I don't mind.
I have a couple friends that occasionally will invite me out to dinner still, that we used to go with John.
Yeah, because it used to be a double date, and now you're kind of this awkward one piece.
Yeah. And sometimes I go, and sometimes it feels just awkward because I'm there with a couple couples, and it's just me, I don't have anyone to bring to the table. But I crave that dialogue, and I think that's why I had so much fun on this vacation, too. I don't know if it was intentional. I don't think it was at the time, but looking back, just having this conversation, I spent a lot of time with the guys getting to know the men and just having a conversation with a man. And,
in a non-intrusive, non-threatening way.
Right. It had nothing to do with anything. I mean, they're my friends' husbands, but it was just so nice to hear men's perspective or even just the way they joke and talk to each other. It was just so nice to spend a whole week with that balance of men that were in relationships with these women that I love, and it was just so good. And I miss it. I think having that balance is really important. I don't think I will be as healthy as I could be for the long run if I don't find a partner, which is why I'm putting myself out there.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we know how important it is for children to have healthy male role models in their lives if they've lost a father to whatever reason, or even if they have a father in the home, other male role models are good. And then female role models are good for children as well. It's no different for us as adults. Again, this comes back to my personal belief system that men and women together are a whole, and we have things to learn from each other. We have strengths and weaknesses. I don't see us as competitive as genders, but rather very complementary and hopefully collaborative. And so if you're listening and you know a widow or a widower, don't be afraid to interact across genders in a very just friendship kind of a way. In a very again, not threatening. We're not looking to marry everybody. I mean, Michelle wants to marry everybody. That's fine. Not all of us. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Come on now. I want to find one special person.
Yes, and I hope you find that person. I really do. I really do. But in the meantime, as you have not yet found that person, there is something beautiful about having adult relationships in a very non-intimate way with both men and women. And I think we need that. And as widows, sometimes we get compartmentalized into that sisterhood, which again is beautiful. But if you're listening and you're a couple and you're going out to dinner, don't be afraid to invite your widow friend to join you, or to invite your widow friend and her kids to dinner with your family. And let's interact.
We're used to being on our own at this point, right?
Yeah. I am such a good third wheel.
I know. The first time or two, it was awkward, but now it's just like, I'm just me. Yeah. You know, I was never, I met John when I was 17, married him 2 weeks out of high school. I know it's a crazy story.
I just can't even think about that.
So I didn't know anything but being with my spouse. I went from my parents' home to my husband's home. And
for how many years? You guys were married a while.
32 years almost. It was 31 years that we had been married when he passed away. But, I think about, too, the other thing, and this is a weird conversation. We need to wrap this up, but really quick, I'll just hit on it. What's interesting, and I know I've talked to you to this before, but we should say it on air. My husband died when he was 54 years old, and at some point, I'm going to pass him, and he was always older than me. Yeah. But my husband has never aged from the moment he died. And I think about that. I'm like, it's going to be really weird when I'm 86 years old and I'm pining away for my 54-year-old hot husband.
Well, this is why we're going to use Time Hop, the little app on Facebook. We're going to take a picture of John and Brent, and we're going to ageify them to be best friends and in a photo with us. Yep. And I'm already older than Brent will ever be. And that is...
Isn't that weird?
That is something. But
you guys were closer in age. John was 5.5 years older than me.
That's a gap.
Yeah,
and you married him at 17. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Bless your mom and dad.
I have 2.5 years until I hit that point.
So here's the takeaways from today as I see it. The resilience of relationships after death. The resilience of survivors who lose someone in a relationship to death. And I think just the resilience of male and female companionship and friendship. I think there's a lot to be unpacked there. So if you're listening, we hope maybe something we've said resonates with you, or that we made you laugh, if nothing else, because this is...
Or that you just kind of saw an insight to how Jennie and I relate to our losses.
Now you know how we think. Well, and I would encourage everyone listening to open your mind to the fact that those not physically living on earth are closer than we think.
Absolutely.
And that's why...
Work on developing that relationship. Yes. And maybe that's what we should end on.
What can you do?
There are actual things that you can do. You can say to your loved one, show me how you want to speak to me. Is it going to be a feather, a dime, a penny, a dragonfly, a butterfly?
An old journal entry. That's why I love, looking at old letters, whether it's from my husband or my great-grandmother I never knew or something. We can connect with the people who make us who we are, whether they're the people who genetically make us who we are or the people who in relationships make us who we are. But I think we are more and more capable when we are part of that greater whole.
Yeah.
Because of those dimensions all around us. But
yeah.
Okay, you guys, we love having you listen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. And whatever you do, remember to be kind. You never know the struggles others are dealing with in their own life. Have a great day.
We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.